I was on the internet and a pop-up came on the screen, and it was a pornography pop-up. And I never in a million years thought that I would have a problem with that. But of all people. But I was curious and I thought, I want to see what this is. So I opened it, and not a word of a lie. Like, you have to understand, I had drank heavily for a few years at that point, done drugs, like a lot of pot. And I had never become even other drugs, right? And I never became like hooked. I was never like, oh, I can't live without this. Can't go a day. That never happened. But with this, as soon as I opened it, something happened. I felt so hopeless because I thought, I'm being tormented by a literal demon. I've lost all control. I was in chains. The level of hopelessness, it was so awful. And I said, God, I'm sure you had a good plan for my life. I felt true remorse. And I said, I'm sure you had a good plan for my life, but I can't do anything about this. I can't fix it. This is my life now. And I felt like I was apologizing, like it was in my heart, I was apologizing to God, but I was also saying goodbye because I thought, this is how it's going to be now. I just give up. Like, this is just my life. And I went from that spot and I walked over to my couch and I sat down. I've never experienced anything like this before, but it was the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. I sat on my couch and the whole room disappeared. Like, I don't even know how to make this make sense, but I sat down and I was in a white light. I was standing there, and on the right side is this bright, bright light. And my whole being, so like, I could feel every cell in my body. You have probably billions of cells, but I could feel every part of me vibrating. And it was like vibrating a phrase. It was vibrating, "This is Jesus Christ, Son of God."
A demonic spirit held Ashley captive, and Ashley had no control of what this demonic spirit made her do. She was held captive, and Ashley felt like giving up. And out of a sudden, Jesus showed up and saved her. Let's listen to what Jesus did for Ashley, and what he did for her, he can do for you.
It's exciting actually to be on this with you. I watched some of your videos and thought, I just love what you guys are doing. So bless you guys. It's awesome. So my story, I always say, it's not flattering to me, but it just showcases Jesus. Like, he is the star of my life. And I feel like all my parts of my story are really bad and all his parts are really good. At least for sure in the beginning. He's always the one that's doing the good stuff, and he's just amazing. And he's been so good to me when I don't deserve it. So I grew up in a non-Christian home. I think that's important to know because I think I know a lot of Christians who grew up in Christian homes, and sometimes they don't really understand what that's like. But I had no real concept of God. My parents actually did take us to church sometimes. And I want to mention that because just because people are in church doesn't mean that they know God or that they even believe at all. And we went to church, but the impression I got at home is that we don't believe in God, because my parents would basically tell me that there's no way to know if God is real. And the idea was basically that it's possible, but it's also possible that we evolved from something, or aliens deposited us, or, it was just very wide open. So I would call them agnostic if I had to put a label on it. But we did actually go to church a couple times. So that's really, I think it's valuable to know that, because just because people are in church, being a witness in church is possible, because not everybody there knows Jesus. And they still need to know Jesus. And sometimes people who enter churches or go to church and they don't really believe, those are the hardest people to reach, because nobody realizes that they don't have a personal relationship with Jesus. So it looks like they do, but they may not. And we didn't. And I don't know if my parents ever did, but I know that when I was growing up, it just wasn't a thing. So, so what that did to me is it made me think that all Christians were fake, basically, because I saw what we were and I thought everybody is probably having the same experience, that Christianity is just a religion and nobody really knows and nobody maybe really believes it for sure. And so it seemed like a bunch of people getting together to feel better about themselves was kind of my impression. And so I never believed, and I didn't ever hear the gospel in a way that I knew what that was. So I didn't even know that Jesus had died for me. And one thing that's kind of interesting is that I saw Jesus in a wax museum with my parents, and he was on the cross as like a wax figure. And I said, "Who's that guy?" And my mom said, "Oh, that's Jesus. He's the Son of God, and his father sent him to die like that." And that's all she said. And so I thought, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to know that God. He sounds awful. Like, I can't believe he would kill his own son." And I didn't understand why uh, that had happened. I didn't know it was for me, or that I just thought it was mean that that happened. And so I just didn't have any idea. But if you, oh, and I should mention, when I was growing up, I had a real struggle with rejection. So, like, kind of that's been my main battle in my life, is rejection. It was just always very consistent, and I felt rejected everywhere, no matter what was happening. And so I mentioned that because it becomes important later in my life, and I think a lot of my problems stem from that. But fast forwarding a bit, my parents sent me to a Catholic school, and in Catholic school, I think I just furthered my belief that it was just religion. Like, I just didn't I never found Jesus there, and I don't want to insult anyone, but I just know that in my experience I never heard about the gospel. I didn't find Jesus there. So it just kind of solidified my belief that it was kind of pointless religion. And then later on, I was in trouble a lot, and I got grounded, and I was trying to go to a school dance. And so I snuck out of the house, but I wasn't very good at sneaking out of the house, and I got caught. And because I got caught sneaking out of the house, my parents decided to send me to a Christian school, like a real charismatic, like, I don't know, I guess you would call it charismatic, like a real biblical Bible Christian school. And it you wouldn't think it would be that different, but it was radically different from, at least the one I went to, different from Catholic school, different from public school. The first thing I noticed was that the kids at the Christian school were actually different. They actually lived different lives than what I had seen elsewhere. And they were very loving. I wasn't really used to, like, there was no gossip, no backstabbing, nobody was like smoking or trying to steal alcohol, or really anything that you would see in other schools as a preteen kind of age. And I was really, like, kind of mystified by them. I couldn't figure out why they were so different, and I thought it was amazing, kind of, like, watching them, and they loved each other, like, not it wasn't in a weird way, but, like, they didn't wanna hurt each other or backstab, or they wanted everybody to feel loved, and it wasn't like they were forcing it either, it's just their personality. And I remember even there was one kid, and I went to their house, and I heard them talking, and they were like, "We should clean the house for mom. She's worked all day and she works really hard. We should clean it all for her and make dinner." And I'm like, I've never heard something like that before in a public school, that kids care about, just little things. But their love and their that different way of life really witnessed to me. That was the first time I saw something real, that I thought, "Oh, maybe there is something different about them. They just weren't the same as everybody else." And then the second thing that started to make me think about this stuff was that we had to do Bible school every day, or sorry, Bible class every day. And I kind of thought we were going to hear some really ridiculous stuff. Like I had heard some of the Old Testament stories, and it's really hard for a non-Christian to grasp, like Noah and the ark and stuff like that. It just sounds like fairy tales. And I thought we were going to hear, unicorns and fairy tales and different things. But the teacher started with Proverbs, and something about the book of Proverbs, it was like, I think maybe he had a gift, and I don't know, the way that he preached Proverbs to us in this class spoke to me as somebody who I didn't know Jesus at all. No experience with the Bible, no revelation, no relationship even with Jesus, but he was speaking the book of Proverbs, and it came alive to me. And I just remember he would describe the different people that God is describing in that book. And I remember thinking, I know those people. Like I've met some of these people, and this book is explaining to me what I'm witnessing. It was really real. And it was what I saw. Like when it talks about the drunkard and the sluggard and the different personalities or the different sort of pitfalls that God is describing, I thought I've witnessed that. And I was blown away by just the reality and the wisdom that was in the book. And then one day, these girls they had sort of like taken me in, like they sort of some of my best friends, and they were so good to me, and they were a huge witness in my life. One day, they said that at lunchtime they wanted to talk to me about something, and I thought, okay, well, it has to be gossip because we're going to like the locker room, or we're going to go to, I think it was like the room before the gym with the lockers and everything. And so I thought, well, if we have to go away somewhere to talk, it's got to be some good gossip, or there has to be something really kind of exciting that they're going to tell me. And so I was excited to go, but I had no concept of the gospel. And so this is what I was thinking. And when I got in there, they started telling me about Jesus and about the cross. And this is the first time in my life since the wax museum, and I didn't get a complete explanation there, but this is the first time in my life that I heard that he actually died for me. No one had ever really like helped me understand that. So they're telling me this, and I remember I could feel like something. Like I felt like I wanted to cry. And I remember thinking that this is too good to be true. Like I want this to be true. I want to believe this. It sounds wonderful that God would care about me. When I was growing up, I think what was related to me is that if God, how do I describe it? Like if God exists, he wouldn't even know who you were because there's 8 billion people on earth, and he might know who Mother Teresa is, but he's way out. If there's a God, it's way out there somewhere and probably doesn't know who you are. And so they kind of acted like a lot of Christian belief is preposterous because that is so unlikely and impossible. But when they were describing that to me, it sounded wonderful that God could love me and didn't reject me, which is what I always felt, that I was rejected. And so to hear God loves you and he even sent his own son to die for you so that you can be forgiven of every wrong thing you've ever done. And part of my rejection feeling was that I was always in trouble and I was always doing everything wrong. And I felt like I couldn't do anything right. And I felt like, who could ever love me because of that? And so I always felt rejected. And so when they're telling me that he not only loved me, I feel like I'm going to get emotional, but he not only loved me, but he died so that everything wrong I've done could be forgiven. It was the most wonderful thing I ever heard. And I found it really hard to believe. And I argued with them. I remember saying, you don't understand. I do everything wrong. And like, I don't even think my own family likes me. And anyways, I remember arguing with them and they argued with me. And they were really like passionate. They really loved Jesus. So they had no problem arguing with me about that and saying, no, he does love you. And we know that. And then they asked me if I wanted to invite him into my heart. And I had never heard that before in my life. And I know it doesn't happen like this for everybody where it's this big thing, right? That changes everything. But for me, when I said yes, because I thought I might as well try it. Like there's no cons. I didn't think that there was anything that would really happen, but I did want it to be true. And I loved what they were telling me. And so I did invite him into my heart. And that's when I truly think that I began to understand that this is all real. Because when I said that prayer, and it was a really simple prayer, I was just asking him to come into my heart, Jesus, and saying, I believe what these people are saying. I believe that you did die on the cross and that you did do it for me and that you are God. Is essentially what I don't remember the exact words, but that's essentially what I was saying, just really simple. And then I just asked him to come into my heart. And I was following their words. And when I did that, I physically felt something happen inside of my being. And it's really hard to explain that because most people, you live your life and you don't feel your spirit. Like it's not like you're walking around and you feel, oh, there's my spirit. Like I can feel that my spirit's there. But when I said that prayer, I felt like almost like something kind of came alive. Like there was some kind of like something happened and now there's this person, there's something in here that wasn't there. I physically felt that. It felt kind of like if you live in a house that was dark and someone came in and turned on the lights, but you didn't even know that you could do that. You didn't know there was a light switch and you could turn on a light. That's what it felt like. Someone came in and did that. Like they turned on the light and you realized you had been living your whole life in the dark. And it was like a physical feeling and my consciousness changed. Like it sounds kind of weird, but the way I'm looking at life, my whole like outlook and consciousness changed after that. And when we left the room, um, it just kept being supernatural because we left the room and I felt like I couldn't feel my legs moving. I looked down to make because I thought I feel like I'm floating. My legs were weightless, in other words, like I couldn't feel the heaviness of them. And the colors were brighter in the hallway, which is I wasn't expecting any of those things. And I did have joy immediately, which was weird. I don't think I had ever really experienced joy before that. I had moments of happiness, but not like an inner joy. So for me, that was brand new. And I did actually like. It's not like I was perfect right away or at all, but my perspective on my friends changed. The thing that I noticed about myself is all of a sudden I cared about the people around me a lot more. Like things that I'd never done before. Like I would call people to see, oh, I remember that issue you told me. I wanted to know how you're doing with that. And like it just really mattered to me. Like I really loved the other brothers and sisters at that school. And so that was when I first met Jesus. And actually I developed a hunger for the word right away. Like I would come home from school, go upstairs and immediately read the Bible for like 2 hours. And not because I was trying to force it, I just really wanted to. I was so and I had opened a Bible before and it sounded like gibberish. I think it has to be spiritual because I could read a book, like I could understand, a normal novel, but I would open the Bible and I would think none of this makes any sense. But after I said that prayer and I invited Jesus in, when I would read the Bible, I actually understood what I'm reading and it made sense and I could read it on and on without being confused, which is amazing. But I think that just proves it's such a supernatural book because you can't even really read it without the Lord, like not properly, you can't understand. So I mean it can't be natural because you can read any other book, you know. And then so so there's a lot that happens in between that and my backsliding. So I backslid and it was pretty bad. I kind of want to mention that before I talk about that. what I experienced with the Lord when I first got saved, because I think people should know that I wasn't like a nominal Christian when I backslid. It wasn't like, oh, I didn't really know him that well and I didn't see anything supernatural. And no, I actually did. And I still backslid. So, um, I went to a youth group, actually went to two youth groups, and they were both awesome. I didn't realize how awesome they were until now I'm older and I see that there are all these varieties of things that people go through in church that I didn't go through. I had an amazing church. The pastor that was at my church was an older guy, and he loved the Bible like nobody I have ever. I mean, his sermons would go on for 2 hours. If we were going to research something, we were going from Genesis to Revelation about that thing. and like he did a thing on sonship that lasted like a year about understanding how you're the son or daughter of God. And it was life changing. He was somebody who just loved the word of God, and they saw miracles. There was prophecy in that church. There was one time he stopped the whole church and he said, "We need to pray for this person." And I don't know why, but God keeps telling me to pray for him. And it turned out he was driving a semi. And right when the pastor stopped the sermon to say, we all need to stop and pray, he had flipped his semi on the highway and was hanging upside down. And like things like that, where it was a good Holy Spirit led church. The youth group that I went to at that church, we saw healings, we saw deliverance, but mainly healings. The one thing that I experienced with deliverance is there was this guy that I went to school with that went there, and he had some suicidal things going on that I wasn't aware of until this. And he threw up a black substance, like a tar. It looked like like tar. Like if you know what tar looks like. Threw that up, and apparently it was deliverance from a suicide demonic thing, which I can't explain. I don't really, but I saw that. And then healings. So we went on a trip to a conference about 3 hours away from where our church was. And I think we were learning about healing at this conference. And there was somebody with an open wound. And we said, well, let's just try to pray. Like they had cut themselves while we're there in the park. And we all put our hands on the cut. Like I think there were probably 10 of us, and we all like on top of each other's hands, laid hands and prayed. Somebody else led the prayer, but I was right front and center view of this person's cut. And we lifted our hands and we all just watched silently, because you could see it looked like someone took a flesh thread, like a thread of skin, and was sewing the cut. Like there was no hand and no needle, but it looked like, you know what I mean? Like if you were sewing, and it just kept happening until the whole cut was closed. Probably took like a couple of minutes. We just sat and watched. And so we saw stuff like that. There was one night a drunk man stumbled into our youth group, because it was kind of in a rough side of town where I went. And he stumbled in and he had his rib sticking out. He had gotten into some kind of fight, I think stabbed maybe, and a rib was poking out. And our youth pastor was so cool, because he brought him up to the front. Like most people would probably kick this person out or call an ambulance or something. But he brought him up because we really believed in healing. And I still do. And he brought him up to the front and we all prayed. It all closed up. And so this was happening around me. Like it's not as if, I was a huge part of, but God was doing things around me where I got to see healing. I got to see deliverance. I had experience with the Holy Spirit. I had spoken in tongues. And so what ended up happening is, to be honest with you, I've thought about this a lot. Like, why did I backslide? There's so many reasons, but it started with bitterness. Like it started with, I was kind of jealous, to be honest, of my Christian friends. They seemed to have it easy. Like they had really nice Christian homes, and they kind of didn't have the same kind of pressures, maybe because their parents weren't super focused on the same things that the world is focused on. I just kind of looked at them and I compared their life to mine, and I felt jealous. So I honestly, when I've thought back to this moment, I think that's where it started, was bitterness and jealousy. And I knew that my heart started to change towards my friends. I started judging them, to be honest, because I thought, well, why should you have it so easy? You do this and you do that. And, you know, and I started to drift. And so, like, the condition of the heart is so crucial, and it's so difficult because it's so subtle. But when you start to notice your heart drifting, or you start to get jealous or unforgiving or bitter, those are things to really nip in the bud, because they can turn into some ugly things. And I was pretty immature. I was a new believer, so I really fell for it. And then there's a mixture of that, and there was this kind of popular doctrine at the time that there were a couple of things. There was prosperity gospel. That kind of, I didn't know what to think about that. And then the other thing was this really horrible teaching about grace that made grace into basically like a license to just do whatever you want. And that the idea or the sentiment is basically that if you are trying to obey and please God, that you may be into legalism. And the word they use for it is striving. So you're just striving to, I guess, impress God or something. And so that's all legalism. And this is really hard for a new Christian to understand. Like, if you read the writings of Paul, and he talks about grace and works, and he talks about the two sides of that coin. Like, you can't have works on their own, they're dead. But there is another side where you can't not have works. If you have faith, you also will have works, because faith without works is dead. And so he's making that point, but there's a way that that can be twisted. And there was a way that that has really been twisted in parts of the church, where it's twisted into this other thing that opens the door for you to do whatever you want and not live for God at all and call it holy. So that was kind of what, if I were just to give it like a summary definition, like what that was. And it really sucked me in because I was so new. Like, it's hard for a new Christian to navigate bad doctrine. That's why leaders are held to such a higher standard, because you really are leading. There are people who literally depend on, like, baby Christians who are kind of watching you like a parent. And so they kind of depend on your example. And so when you have those things in the church, they can be really disastrous. And when you understand how many people fall away because of that, you can kind of understand why God is judging them a lot more harshly, because they have so much more responsibility. And some of them know what they're doing, and that's even worse. They know that they're twisting it and they're using it for something else. And so that can hurt a lot of people. So for me, by the time I was in college, like, because I thought, well, I don't want to strive. I don't, like, why should I put effort into this? And by the time I was in college, I was drinking and doing drugs. I was smoking pot and doing other drugs. And it kind of escalated. Like, it started with drinking. It started with just heavy, heavy drinking and no control. Like, it was really, I would drink to blackout drunk, and then it escalated into other things. So as time progressed. And that's actually during the time I met my husband. He was never a Christian. Before that, I was backslidden, but I met him in that situation, and he has since come to the Lord, and we kind of came back. I came back to the Lord, and he came to the Lord. But he was in that too. And so I backslid pretty heavily. And the thing about backsliding for somebody who had a real relationship with God, I've heard this said a lot, that when a Christian who is, like, this is the way a non-Christian would look at it, or without going into the conversation, this is the way somebody who doesn't really understand would look at it. The more extreme Christians, when they go the other way, are more extreme the other way. So I had seen all these supernatural things, and I had a real relationship with God. And when I backslid, it was quite extreme the other way. yeah, I can't remember exactly how it was described to me, but the way that person was telling me, they were saying, basically advocating for religion, because they're saying, well, if you don't get so deep into it, then you're not going to backslide deep either. It's just kind of even, they were just expecting more of this is just part of my life. This is not my life. Anyways, it doesn't really matter, but I did backslide pretty hard. And the thing about a backslidden Christian like that is that they're usually pretty miserable. And I was really miserable. And I feel like I can explain that a little bit, because they can be some of the harshest critics of a Christian and some of the hardest people to witness to, in a way, because they've been there, done that, and they feel rejected by God. And especially for me, because rejection had been such a big part of my life, I felt really rejected by God. I thought I was an apostate, like a total apostate, like is written in the Bible, where there's no hope for them to come back. They've seen too much, they've experienced God, and now that they've gone the other way, they can't possibly be returned back to the Lord. And so that's how I felt. And because you've had a taste of something real with Jesus, if you then backslide, it is so much worse. It is so much worse, because it's real. You can't go back to thinking, oh, this isn't real, so that's okay, because it wasn't really anything. You can't really go back to that. So even though you're back in the world, you know your situation, and you know how bad it is, and you know what you're missing. And then when you get into the world, you realize it's not as good as it looked. You thought it was going to be fun, or you thought it was going to be better over there, and it's way worse. And it's just a mirage. There's nothing there that has life in it. And so feeling like I could never go back to God was like a miserable position for me. And I was a pretty miserable person, and I wasn't a very nice person. And so I partied a lot and abused substances. That went on for a while. My husband was with me that whole time through the entire thing. At some point, even though I was miserable and not really interested in giving up drinking, I thought, I don't really want to do drugs anymore. I don't want to live this life, because I grew up with a fairly nice household, like from the outside. Like, it was a nice looking house. We had nice cars and this kind of thing. So I thought, that's what I want. I thought that will make me happy. Like, I still want things in life. So I stopped with heavy partying, and I actually moved away and got a job and went to college, and I had an apartment. We got a car. My husband came with me, so we were living together before marriage. None of those things, that living together before marriage and stuff like that, wasn't a problem with my family, because they were not really believers in things that Christians would believe in, like getting married before you live together and that kind of thing. So that was not an issue. Their main issue was, are you making money? Are you successful? So that's what I was going after. But I honestly, because once you know Jesus, you can't leave. Like, the whole backsliding thing, there is no going back. No matter how bad it gets, no matter how hard, even if you're going through something as a Christian and it's so hard and you're like, I just want to give up, there really is no going back. Like, it doesn't work like that, because you already know that he's real. It's like Plato's allegory, where they're in the cave. Have you ever read that? Plato's allegory. They're in the cave, and somebody leaves the cave and comes back, and they're like, there's a place outside of the cave. There's something outside. And everybody's like, you're crazy. There's nothing out. There's nothing outside of this cave. But once you left the cave and you realize there's something outside, you can't just go back and pretend there's nothing there. So I was miserable, but I couldn't find a way back to God, because I just thought, he'll never accept me back. I thought, I'm an apostate. I'm going to hell. This is where I believe I'm going. And I believe there was no way out of that situation. So that's really dire and miserable. And so at that time, I was just focusing on money. Like, how do I get myself a life so that I can enjoy myself? And my husband and I had an okay relationship. Like, it wasn't perfect. So some things seemed to be going okay. My job was okay. I was making good money. And so I felt like I'm getting it together. And God kind of allowed something to happen to me. I believe He allowed this because I had to come to the end of myself and realize that I can't, that I, there, like, I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes you have to hit rock bottom, or you have to hit like a really low place and be humbled in order to even come back to God. Because, and so, like, we know people that are backslidden right now, and some of them are in a really bad place, and their parents are like really understandably upset. But sometimes that is the best place. Like, if they don't want to come back to the Lord and they fall really hard and they go to a bad place, sometimes that is the place you will meet Jesus. That's the place that it will all change. That's what happened for me. Comfort wasn't good for me. That the fact that I had a good job, I had a good car, I had a good apartment, and everything was fine wasn't good for me, because I could have just stayed like that. You know, I didn't feel like I needed to reach out. I didn't feel like I could reach out to God. So what happened was, and it's embarrassing, but I was on the internet, and a pop-up came on the screen, and it was a pornography pop-up. And I never in a million years thought that I would have a problem with that. But of all people. But I was curious, and I thought, I want to see what this is. So I opened it, and not a word of a lie. Like, you have to understand, I had drank heavily for a few years at that point, done drugs, like a lot of pot. And I had never become, even other drugs, right? And I never became like hooked. I was never like, oh, I can't live without this. Can't go a day. That never happened. But with this, as soon as I opened it, something happened. And it's just shows that it's all spiritual. Like, it's all spiritual, it's demonic. Because how do you explain why one person, they take one drink and they're addicted, right? They're an alcoholic. And you can explain it with science and things, but it's deeper than that. So I opened this window, and it was like an immediate addiction. It was to the point where, and I'm telling the truth, I didn't enjoy that I was watching that. Like, I actually did not want to do that. But I felt like I had no control over my own life. I was not proud of it. I was not happy about it. I would actually cry about it. And I tried to stop every single day. I'm like, I'm not watching that again. It's so evil. Like, I don't want to be that person. But something kept, like, I can't explain it. It was like an addiction. Like, I just couldn't stop watching. And it was the main part of my life. And then it got so bad. I realized I had no control. It got so bad that when I was falling asleep or waking up, and I wasn't asleep, like, I'm not saying like I was asleep and I saw this. I'm saying it just coming out of sleep, waking up, opening your eyes, and immediately, every single time I was just drifting off or just waking up, I saw an 8-foot tall demon. Like, I know it was a demon. I can describe what it looked like, though. It was like a shadow, if you've seen like a shadow in the shape of a man. But imagine that is solid. So there's a solid dark shadow, but it's like a being. Like, it's not air, it's solid person, or not person, but spirit, in the shape of a man. And it was about 8 feet tall, because my apartment ceilings were approximately 8 feet. And I somehow just knew that it was 8 feet. I don't know why that would be important information, but I kind of knew that what I'm looking at. And when it would stand over me, and people have terminology for all this stuff, but I don't like to use that. So So people say sleep paralysis. But to me, from my perspective, I didn't move because I was terrified. I don't know if I couldn't move. Like I never tried because I was so terrified. When that thing would stand over me, it put like a physical terror, like not an emotion of terror. It's almost like terror was its own spirit. Do you know what I mean? Like it's almost like terror became me or something. Like it took over. And so I could feel terror, not just fear, but terror from my head to my feet. Like it was my whole experience at that time. And so I would try not to breathe, and I would be seeing this thing, try not to breathe and stay still because I thought it's gonna kill me. That's what I was afraid of. I thought it was gonna kill me. And so at that point, I felt so hopeless because I thought I'm being tormented by a literal demon. I've lost all control. I was in chains. Like that is like I can't imagine an experience where you're more in spiritual chains. Could not escape, could not help myself, had no power over this thing. And I didn't believe I could call out to God.
So seeing this demon, was it a one-time thing, or was it like
Every time.
a continuous occurrence where you kept seeing this particular demon?
Yeah. Once I saw it the first time, after that, it was every time. So every time I'm falling asleep. So that thing was with me all the time. Like, I really believe it had chains on me. And that's what it felt like. And I felt like it was with me all the time. It was awful, gross feeling. Gross. Like, you don't want one of those with you.
Why do you think that this demon was there and always there with you? Was it something in particular you were doing that attracted the demon?
It was definitely the pornography. It was almost like that's a trap, right? So you get lured in. Oh, this is no big deal. Nothing will happen. You get lured in, and then they've got you. And then I didn't know how to get out of it. Like, and I was under this belief that I can't come to God. And I even thought maybe if I fix myself, I'll be able to come to God and talk to Him again. Like, because I was desperate. So I thought, well, maybe if I just fix this, if I just like find a way to get rid of this. For some reason, I couldn't put it together that I need to come to Jesus and He will help me. I couldn't put it together in my mind because I just didn't feel like He would help me. I felt so condemned. So I'm trying to fix it on my own. And there is no way, like if you are having experiences with demons, if anyone's watching this and they have stuff like that going on, you cannot defeat them on your own. You can't. I tried, and I know now biblically that I can't either. I need Jesus. But someone who has a problem with this has no power over that of your own. In your own flesh, you don't have that. Those things are something else. Like the spirit realm is way superior. So anyways, eventually something happened in my mind finally, and I realized I remember the day. Like I remember having this realization, and it felt like hopelessness. Everybody like, and I'm big on faith, but I met Jesus in this place where I had the least faith I've ever had. That's how good He is. Like I had nothing to offer Him. I was the most hopeless I've ever been. I've never felt that level of hopelessness. It was like there is nothing to look forward to. There is no way out of this. It's all over for me, is what it felt like. And I said that to God because I had this moment of realization. I don't know if God put this into my mind or I just finally came to the end of myself and realized, like, learned something. I don't know. But it all hit me all at once. And I realized I can't do it. I'll never defeat this. I realized that God probably had a good plan for my life. Like I actually thought back to when I first met Him and different things that I had had with the Lord before. And I thought He probably had a good plan for me. And now look where I am. And I thought, it's all over. Like, this is it. This is my life now because I have no control. I can never get out of this. And it was the worst feeling, but I didn't realize it was going to be the best place to be, to come to the end of myself like that. I really thought it was over. So I finally broke down and spoke to God. I hadn't talked to him. I was kind of angry with him. I kind of blamed him for my own backsliding. So I broke down. I remember I was in my kitchen. I was staring at the wall on the right side of my kitchen. I remember everything about that moment. And I remember the level of hopelessness. It was so awful. And I said, God, I'm sure you had a good plan for my life. I felt true remorse. And I said, I'm sure you had a good plan for my life, but I can't do anything about this. I can't fix it. This is my life now. And I felt like I was apologizing, like it was in my heart, I was apologizing to God, but I was also saying goodbye because I thought, this is how it's going to be now. I just give up. Like, this is just my life. And I went from that spot and I walked over to my couch and I sat down. And when I sat on the couch, I've never experienced anything like this before, but it was the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. I sat on my couch and the whole room disappeared. Like, I don't even know how to make this make sense, but I sat down and I was in a white light. So I had been in my room, in my living room, with I had a blue couch and it was everything was kind of brown and gray and blue. I'm in that room and I sit down and then I'm not in the room anymore. I was just gone around me and I was in a white light, and it's not like any other light. It was the brightest white light I've ever seen. Like, you can't compare it to the sun. The sun, if you tried to compare like the brightest summer day to the white light, it looks almost like a dim light bulb in comparison. It was so bright. I don't even know how to describe, but and the light that I was in, this isn't normal either. You could see forever. So there's no end. It just goes on forever, and it's just a white light without end. And there was nothing else there but light. I was just in light. And then on my right side was the source of all the light. It was the brightest point. And I think back about this, I didn't actually like turn and look or anything, but it was kind of different because when you're in a spiritual place, you know things without having to look or having to say something. Like, you'll know what you're being told without hearing it audibly and that kind of thing. But I was standing there, and on the right side is this bright, bright light, and my whole being, so like I could feel every cell in my body. You have probably billions of cells, but I could feel every part of me vibrating. And it was like vibrating a phrase. It was vibrating, "This is Jesus Christ, Son of God." It was like my whole body acknowledged, my whole being, I'm a creation. Every part of me as a creation was vibrating that phrase, that this is Jesus. It's almost like your whole being is built to acknowledge Jesus. Like it has the code of who Jesus is. This is the one you recognize. This is the one that you were literally created to be with and that you were matched to. So my whole body was vibrating this. So I didn't have to think like, who is this or what's happening? I knew I was Jesus. And I pretty much forgot about where I had just come from because I was in that place. I could have stayed there forever. And the amazing thing when I look back, this is hard for me to understand, probably because I'm human. But the amazing thing is that even though I was in my worst state, I was so like, no one would want to be my friend the way I was back then. I didn't even want to be around me. Like, I wanted to get away from me. And that's how bad I was, and gross, and like just nothing good about my life. And I wouldn't want to come to God because I would think, oh, I don't want him to see me like this. Like, I'm so ashamed. But when I was in that place, I only felt love. I just felt love and joy and peace. I felt accepted. It's like I forgot everything that had just happened. It's like, I don't know. It's like it never even happened. And he loved me as if it hadn't happened, which I don't understand. Like, I still don't really like understand doctrinally, right? Like, I don't know, but he's just so good. He's better than anybody makes him sound. He's better than, like, people can do a good job of describing how good he is, but he's actually better. Like, he's better than you think he is. And so I'm standing there next to him, and I have no right, like, I don't deserve to be there at all, but he loved me and he never got mad at me or anything. All he did was showed me something. So somehow I knew that we're going to watch something, and that tall demon thing stood in front of us. All of a sudden it was there in this light, and it was standing in front of us, but I could not have cared less. I had no fear, like, not even when I was in my room and saw that thing, couldn't even move. But when Jesus was next to me and I'm in this place, I thought to myself, it could stay. I don't care. Like, not that I wanted it to stay, but I wasn't afraid. I wasn't like scared of it at all. So, but I knew we were going to watch something and I didn't know what it was. And I was just standing there and I saw it start to shrink in front of me, in front of both of us. Like, he stood there beside me the whole time. And I saw it shrinking down in front of me. And it seemed like it was going slow because there was a point in the middle where I thought, when is the shrinking going to stop? Like, I just kind of thought, I wonder how small it really is, because it sort of seemed like maybe I'm being shown what it really looks like in the light, you know? And so it's shrinking down and down and down. And it shrank all the way down until it was like basically a little bug. I thought it, like, I'm going to say it looked like an ant, but I don't know why it would look like that, but it did. And I knew that I was supposed to step on it. So I used my right foot to step on it and squish it. And then when I lifted my foot, there was nothing there. And then that's when Jesus actually said something audible. Like, he had spoken to me, but it was like none of it's audible and you just know stuff. But he said something audible. And I've thought about this, and I think there's significance when he says something audible. I think he's putting an emphasis on something. There's more, like, there's always more to what he's saying, but I think that was like a point, you know. And so he said, see, I've put this under your feet. That's what he said. See, I have put this under your feet. And then after that, I was back in my living room and the whole room looked brighter. And I just honestly sat there in shock, and I was like really excited that this has just happened. I never had another problem with that again. Like, not even like an inkling of a desire, like nothing. It's like totally gone from me. It's like if every cell in your body was scrubbed of something and there's no residue, no struggle there at all, like just delivered completely. But one of the first things I thought was, the first verse that came to my mind was, he who the Son sets free is free indeed. And I had never truly understood that verse, because it just seemed like you're repeating yourself. Why are you repeating yourself? What's the point? But when this happened, I realized, no, if he does it, you really are free. You don't know freedom until he gives it to you. Then you're really free and you're really new, and it's really, there's not even a residue. There's nothing left. It's all gone. It's like it never happened. And that's what it was like. And then the second thing I thought of was, anybody I tell this story to is going to think I'm insane. So I didn't tell anybody for a long time. I told my husband. I didn't tell anybody else because I thought they're going to think I'm nuts. And I hadn't really heard a testimony like that before. But I did, like, during that same moment after, I was sitting there and I said, God, anybody that I tell this to will think I'm crazy. What if they say that it's demonic? What, like, this whole encounter? And God brought to my memory when the Pharisees said, you cast out demons by Beelzebub. Do you remember that part? Yeah. I said that, and he said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So if the enemy casts out the enemy, then he's defeating himself, right? And so I felt like I had my answer. But I still didn't tell anybody right away because I just thought, I think they're going to think I'm crazy. And then it wasn't until around COVID time that God started putting it on my heart to tell people. And so I made it public on my social media at the time with friends, and so that everybody would know. And I think some did think I was a bit crazy, but that's okay. I think it's still like, why would you make something like that up? I don't gain anything from it. Some people might think I'm crazy. Like, it doesn't benefit me in any way, you know? So I figured it's a good testimony to anybody who really thinks about it. If they're not saved and they think about what would be the motivation to say that. I've never made a dime off of it. I've probably made more enemies than friends telling them that story. So there's no benefit except to glorify Jesus, which is what I'm doing, with it. So the other thing that I usually tell along with this, because it was right around the same time as the story about the clock, and that happened around this time. It was after we came back to the Lord, and there's a really funny story in there because my husband got saved. He heard my testimony, and he had kind of heard a bit. Like, there had been times when I was backslidden that I would tell him things, so he already knew that I had been a Christian and had some information and stuff like that. We had actually tried to go to a church, and I just could never get over the feeling of being rejected. And anyway, so when this happened and I told him, we really committed and we got married. We started planning our wedding because I thought, I can't live in fornication anymore. Like, I just can't. Because of his love and because of his goodness, you're like, how can I just go and like live like that after you do this for me? And he's so amazing that nothing is worth it. Like, sin isn't worth it because he's so much better. Like, when you get a taste of Jesus, he's so much more amazing than anything that you could have in the world. Like, I mean, it's hard for non-Christians to understand that. I know non-Christian people, and they don't understand why you don't want to go drink with them or party with them, or they don't understand. Like, I sometimes feel like they think you are trying to resist. But if I could only express to them that I'm not trying to resist, you can't pay me to go do that. Like, you can't pay me to do it because it's like going to the dentist. It would be like pulling teeth because of the excitement and the joy and like the level of just amazingness that you have. I don't even know if there's a word, but when you're with Jesus, how much better it is. Everything else looks like, it's like you're eating a filet mignon with truffles and like a feast, and someone's offering you a hot dog, or like, do you know what I mean? I don't want that. Or they're offering you like a moldy sandwich or something, and they think it's really impressive. That's what it feels like, because he's so much better. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but I came back to the Lord, and my husband, Justin, he came to the Lord. And God has done amazing things in his life too. And he got baptized, and there's a whole story there that is hard to weave in because it's different. But during this time, we were watching a documentary on Israel. So this is after we were married. We had a really great wedding, and God really blessed us. Like, we didn't deserve the blessings we have. You just think to yourself, how could God be blessing you with these things when you so don't deserve the bless? You know what I mean? Like, he's just so good. It has nothing to do with our goodness, that's for sure. So we're sitting there and we're watching this documentary on Israel, and we're watching a documentary about it's about the third temple. So I don't know if everybody knows this, but they're planning the third temple. They've been planning it for years. They say some people say they're not, and some people say they are. There's an entire institute that's planning it. So we're watching a documentary that's describing all of that. While that's happening, there's a clock on the wall behind me that we had got for wedding shower, actually. And it had been dead for about 6 months at that point, and I never replaced the batteries because I didn't like the ticking of the clock. And I really liked the look of it. It was really big and like old looking. And so it was decorative. It didn't tick or work at all. And so we're sitting there watching this, and all of a sudden, with no warning, like we weren't feeling particularly spiritual, or, we're just sitting there and we're watching the documentary, and all of a sudden there's this like loud voice. And I've heard this happen to other people too, but it's hard to describe. A loud voice, it's not coming from any direction. Like usually when you hear a sound, there's a direction, whether it's up, down, left, right, like coming, northeast or whatever. This voice had no direction. It was just everywhere all at once. And it was loud. It was like, but not yelling, but very loud volume. And the voice seemed to go through my body. So like most voices don't do that. Like usually sound bounces off of you. This sound didn't bounce, I guess you could say. It didn't bounce the way that sound bounces off of things. And it was very loud, and it said the countdown is on, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like I was just shocked that this was even happening. And the clock on the wall behind me that had been dead started ticking. My husband, what he heard was more like a loud lightning, or not lightning, thunder, like a thunder sound. And he saw the clock tick and was like, what was that? And I heard a clear as day voice, like no thunder, but it was like booming voice. And I knew it was God, because who else could it be? I mean, I don't know. It has to be God. And also it went right through me, and I was so stunned. And the fruit that came out of that experience for me was that I felt like Jesus is coming back. And I felt it to such a degree that I became instantly grieved that the people in my life were going to hell. And I like, it sounds simplistic, but you can't discount that people who don't have Jesus are going to hell. And sometimes we kind of forget that, or we like just live our lives. And that's so easy to do. And that's what I was doing. I didn't even realize I was doing that I was living in a way that I understood people were going to hell, but I wasn't grieved by it. But when this happened, I have never been so grieved in my life, that everybody around me, my family, friends, lots of my friends that I had grown up with, that many, many people in our lives not only didn't know Jesus, but had no interest to know. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It hit me like I felt almost, for lack of a better word, like smacked in the face with the realization that these people are going to hell and I'm never going to see them again. And this is so tragic. And so I started witnessing, but I had no filter either. Like I told people everything. I told them about this encounter with the clock. I knew some people probably thought I was crazy, but I was so grieved that these people were going to hell that I didn't care if they thought I was crazy. I was just trying to warn them, because my impression was the way that hit me was like Jesus could come back right now. He could come back tomorrow. He could come back anytime. And it's so hard for us to, it's hard for us in time, the way we live, to understand that in a real way. But at that point in time, I understood it in a real way. And I knew that if he came back right then, that I would be saying goodbye to so many people in my life forever. And so I started I basically was online begging them to get saved. I begged my family, I phoned them, and I was the subject of mockery and stuff like that. But I just really didn't care. And I never felt, I felt like the way I had always lived, a more normal way, was actually insane, like kind of crazy. And the way I was now living was the way that makes sense. That it actually made sense to be more grieved about people going to hell, and to be more urgent about their salvation. And that's the way I felt. I should say that I don't think I did everything right during that season. And I stopped at some point because there was a Christian I really respected who told me that this wasn't, I don't know, they kind of criticized what I was saying. But I look back and I actually think that there was more good about that than there was, even though it wasn't perfect, there was more, the urgency and the like grief over the lost was something that I would like to have that level of urgency again and maybe just know what to do with it better. But this is one of the things that the church has kind of gone numb about a little bit. Even myself, like I look at myself now and I get wrapped up in life and I have kids and responsibilities and things, but I get wrapped up and I forget to make time for, like, if God says, I need you to go tell that person about me, or go pray for that person, or tell people, because they could be their last day. And I lived that time period after that experience like it was today, like he's coming today. And when you live like that, you will look crazy. You will. But I think the disciples looked probably a little crazy, and there were people who thought Jesus was crazy. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And before we go, can you pray for the viewers, those listening, and that the Holy Spirit will help them and will encourage them, and whatever difficulties they're going through, and that at the end, let all of us make heaven.
Yeah. Well, Jesus, show us what to pray. Tell me what to pray. Jesus, I just thank you for everything that you've done for us. I thank you for everybody that means so much to you that you would have watched any part of this. And I pray that whatever it is that you are saying to them, it's always so specific and it's so directly to the target. You just know them so well and you love them so well. You know exactly what to say. And I pray that they would hear you so clear that your voice would just be the only voice that they are hearing. God, I ask that you would, even now, start a work in people. Maybe they don't even know if they've ever had your work inside them. But even if they haven't, I pray that right now you would just start a work in them, that you always finish work that you start. I pray that you would meet them exactly where they're at. And um, I ask that you would give them clarity, that you would give them a hunger for your word, God, and a hunger for just spending time with you, that you would become their safe place, and that whatever they go through in life, that you would be the place their mind and heart goes to when they need somebody, or when they need to lean on someone, or they go through something hard, that you wouldn't be someone that they shy away from or think of last, but that you would be the first resort always. I pray you'd give them a supernatural trust and faith that's a gift from you. Like, put that seed of faith and trust in their heart, no matter what their past looks like or what their history is like, that you would just put that supernatural gift of faith in them. And God, I ask that there would be a good harvest. I know that you want this more than I do, that I'm asking things that are on your heart. And you said your will is that everyone would be saved, that no one would perish. And so I pray that everybody who watches this, that none of them would perish, that we wouldn't lose a single one, and that you would bring a great harvest out of it, that you would bring good fruit from it. I pray that there would be no misunderstanding when people are watching. I just completely bind any kind of effort of the enemy to cause misunderstanding, twisting, hearing the wrong thing, confusion. I bind all of that in Jesus' name, in his name. And I just release like revelation on people watching, that it wouldn't just be listening to somebody else talk, but that it would be personal to them, that there would be revelation in their heart, revelation in their mind, even if they don't understand it at first, that would birth things into their life. And God, I ask that you would wash them with the water of your word. I ask that if there's people watching who don't even know you at all, God, would you speak to them personally? Would you reach out to them personally and just draw them to yourself? Would you do something that they will know is you? And I ask that you would bless them, God. I ask that you would enter their situation, whatever it is, whether even if it's really bad, that you enter their situation, their life, right where they're at right now. That you would enter it, and that you would be the agent of change that is going to just turn the whole thing around. God, I ask that they would open the door, that you're knocking on their heart. And Father, I ask that you would bless this offering of this time talking about you, that you would bless this and use it to your will, God, so that any part of your heart that you would want to use any part of this for would be fulfilled, that it would just be something that makes you so happy and that causes such good fruit. And I pray that everybody listening would understand your love for them. Not that we can fully understand it, but God, that you would give them revelation of your love that they haven't had before. And that you would just plant that in them, the love that just anchors them. I thank you, God. And I ask for the salvation of everyone watching. God, that you would finish the work. Even this talk is a work. This is a beginning. It's a seed. It is something. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and you are your word. We're written in your story, and you're written in our story. And so this is a living word. This is a living thing. And I ask that this seed would be blessed, it'd be watered, that you would watch over it, God, and that it would go into fertile ground in people's hearts and make real change, that there would be a real healthy plant that comes out. In Jesus' name. Amen.